now all of a sudden you've got to like make money from music, and I think that's really the first point of compromise for anybody when music creation happens, right? When it has to make money, like when you're trying to make both of these things coexist, right? I need to make money and I only want to do this. I think compromise comes in, and I think that's what the beauty of Lowlives was when we started it.
Well, Luke and Lee of Lowlives. I mean, it had to be an alliteration, right? With those names. Thank you so much for your time today. I really do appreciate it. I mean, from what I can tell from behind the scenes in the press, that's talking, there's a lot of buzz growing for the album coming out. We're still a few weeks away, but nevertheless, how are you guys going through this motion? Because obviously people that are following you in your previous lives and in this live know that you're far from new to the game. But that being said, and with some EPs and singles out already, a first full-length album is always a special thing for a new band. But for like, you know, road dogs like yourselves that have seen it all, is that truly still something like, you know, fun and exciting, or is it, you know, same old really?
Yeah. It's the most fun thing about being in a band is the day when you get your record. Like, I can't wait to get the vinyl in our hands and be like, for fucking 4 years or however long since these songs have been around for, finally have them done. So, yeah, we can't wait, man, to finally get it out.
It's also a bit of a relief because, you know, people have saw videos of us recording an album in the studio in 2021.
Right.
So, like, that's been difficult to manage because obviously we wanted to post like, we're hyped, we're doing an album. Finally, we're doing an album. And then here we are in 2024 is finally the release date, you know, and there's a lot of things that kind of go into that probably the average listener wouldn't really know or understand. Right. And so trying to manage that has been tough, you know. So I'm so relieved that we're finally here and we're able to put this album out, and we have all the intentions, and I'm sure no one's going to buy into it, but we have all the intentions of not waiting long for the next album. We already started writing it, so, you know, we hope that we could put something else out fairly quickly after this too, so we just hopefully keep those people interested, you know. So yeah.
Well, so what you're saying is, Luke, that you're right now relearning your own songs again, because for you this is old news and you've already moved on to the next stage.
100%.
Basically.
I mean, kind of, yeah. This is not your first rodeo either, is it?
No. This is, I think, the last 3 years, 800 interviews or something like that. So it's ticking.
Wish I was your loser, and I wish you were mine. They say that.
Now, so one thing that I thought was just fun to see was, I mean, you guys are very open and vocal about, like, hey, these are our inspirations. At the end of the day, you guys are letting your inner teenager come out, because I think all three of us were teenagers in the 90s. I was maybe a little bit later 90s and a few years behind you guys, maybe 2-3 years younger than you, but still, there's no secret about that. But then when I thought, what I think is super cool is I went through all those comments of your fans on those videos, and barely people are like, oh, this sounds so much like XYZ, you know, but Bush, Nirvana, whatever you want to call it. People just seem to like it. Was that like a moment when you do see the fans reacting and that nobody's giving you like shit, like, oh, we've heard this sound before? People just seem to have a good time.
I wouldn't care if they did. Like, so that's a very interesting question. I love it, and the reason I love it, like, I've thought about that, like, myself, like, and I've been curious because, like, I think about the things that came back around when I was a kid, right? You know, like, growing up in the age that we did, there was always kind of like a re-emergence of something, right? That was kind of coming back around. And I never feel like the 90s thing really fully came back around. So I'm wondering if some of the younger folks that are engaging with us have ever really been exposed to, like, just straight up hard guitar music, like grunge rock, you know. And so, yeah, I've always been curious about that, because I feel like there will be the nostalgia folks that are just kind of like, man,
Of course.
this reminds me of like this stuff, and I welcome that too, you know. But yeah, I wonder if the younger folks are kind of like, you know, there was things when I was a kid that was like, man, this song's wicked, you know, and then my dad would be like, oh, that's just a rip off of this, and you go and listen to what, and then you'd be like, oh, it is, right? You know what I mean? So I'm wondering if like that's happening now.
Yeah,
Lee, you look like you were about to say something. Sorry, man.
No, you're exactly right. Like, we definitely do wear our influence on our sleeves, I think, because we've
there's no secret.
done, you know, loads of old bands and toured a lot before. I think we were just like, let's just make some shit that's fun. And also because of that's the shit we grew up on, it's so easy for us to write. We're not trying to like shoehorn stuff in. Like in my old band, we were a super heavy band. But the shit that comes naturally to me is like Nirvana, Foo Fighters, Silverchair. That's the stuff that every time I pick up a guitar, it's like that's what I naturally play. So it was like at the end of that band, trying to shoehorn in Nirvana sounding stuff with like it doesn't work. So as soon as we like started this band together and we got in a room together, it was just like it's just easy. Like it's just natural and easy, and it's like it's what we listen to every single day. So it's been the biggest part of our lives. So why would we not write that music, I guess? It's not like we purposely went, we need to be grunge as fuck. Like it was just like, that's what we love. So,
so I want to go a layer deeper, if you will, because for me, when I was listening to the stuff, there's the music for sure, but what the really good bands of that era did, or how they, I think, connected with fans that the mediocre bands didn't, and I see that with you as well. And maybe I'm just projecting. I want to get your take on that. Is those guys, and especially the two singles that have already been released for the new album, I think are very similar. That they are both they are both talking about the world around us, but from a very introspective perspective. Like for people that are looking for a very personal song, they're very personal songs. But for people that are looking a little bit bigger on, here's some things that we see are wrong with society or what should be addressed, it's there as well. And that's a very subtle balance to pull off. And not everybody can do that. And I think you guys did a great, obviously that is also amped by what you do in the video clips as well. There's no doubt about that. But is that something that, finding that balance, if you will, to something that is both macro and micro at the same point, is that something that you were just saying, it just comes natural? Or is that something that you go in the creative process like, well, we want to write a fun song, but we also have something to say?
A little bit. I think a lot of this record has come from, we wrote most of the lyrics during the pandemic. So we were obviously, both of us wondering what the hell is, you know, the whole world's falling apart. Is this the end of our band? Because it was just like we couldn't do anything anymore. So I think a lot of those things came out on the record, and I think a lot of people can relate to those lyrics as well. I don't think we purposely went into it like, oh, we need to write a song that's like this, that can connect to these people kind of thing. The only song on the record that had a bit more thought, that wasn't as personal, that told more of a story, is a song called Damien, which is about a kid that went missing from where I'm from on the Isle of Wight in England. I think all the other ones were kind of personal, came from us. So I think, and I guess that's relatable, isn't it? Everyone was in that panic. So
I think as well, there is sort of like, as you hone your craft in writing songs, right, there's some songs that you just gotta say something. It doesn't matter how direct it is, you know what I mean? Like, it's just gotta be like, sorry that listener, you're gonna have no relatability to this thing that I gotta rant about, you know. But then there are other songs where I think like there's a feeling, right? And when you craft a song and you craft the lyrics, right, it's kind of like, how can you describe a song, and how can we describe this topic, right, without being so direct that it might also be misunderstood as another topic, right? Like, you know, I think that I love those songs where, you know, you think about the lyrics and they relate to you, and you've applied what is important to you in those lyrics, right? But then when you hear the songwriter say like, hey, what was that song about? And they're like, oh, it was about this. And you're like, whoa, it kind of is about this. But like, I interpret it a different way. Like, I kind of like when lyrics are written with enough room for someone to be able to apply their own narrative to them. Like, there's enough hooks in the song for them to be like, okay, yeah, man, this kind of is relatable to me. And then they're able to apply it to something in their life. But in reality, like, maybe it was a slightly different angle for the writer, you know. I've always been a big fan of that, and I definitely think we do try to leave a bit of a broad stroke there occasionally, because, you know, in the past I've felt like with lyric writing it's easy to be too on the nose. And, you know, that might work in some circumstances but not others. So I think definitely the broad strokes of what you've just called out there is accurate, and I actually love that you've detected that. You know, there's actually another single before those two. I think the reason that it doesn't get included in the press blast is because right before we did the deal with Spine Farm, we didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't know if we were going to have a release partner. We were like in talks, and we just had to put music out for so long that we had a full roadmap and plan to release this ourselves DIY. And so one single actually went out first, which if you've seen the videos, you'll be missing the first part of the Helvis video, the kid with the red mask. Freaking Out is actually the first single off the record. So it's Freaking Out, Liar, Loser, which Loser has a completely different video.
Right.
And then the next single
Really trying to confuse things.
Yeah, right. We Yellowstoned everyone. We kind of did part one and part two, and then we were like, hey, here's a whole nother video. We're just going to disappear and not give you the end. But that drops tomorrow, so You Don't Care drops tomorrow, and that's the third part of the video trilogy there as well. So if that was any question marks for you, that's why.
Well, the story that we see with the Helvis character, and kind of showing not only the challenges that growing generations have to go through, living in a world that, you know, luckily when the three of us were kids, we didn't have to deal with a bunch of that shit. But we had other stuff to deal with, and everybody has to deal with shit, and that's my ridiculously forced segue here.
I love it.
You both have seen highs and lows in your careers of your other bands, and, you know, some of the highest highs and the lowest lows, and you had to bounce back from that. Luke, in your case, to the point that you were like, I'm fucking done with this shit.
Right, yeah.
And then you start working on a fun new project, DIY, and all of a sudden, it is now a band under Spine Farm, a label that's doing really great. You got the album coming out, and all of a sudden, this is like the real thing again. Yeah. Was that, a lack of a better word, scary to commit to again? To go like, hey, let's do this?
Yeah, I mean, the way this band started off was like not really to be a band. It was just write songs. I'd found Lee. We talked a little bit online. We kind of knew each other loosely from each other's bands. And when we finally connected, and, you know, he was sort of saying, like, I'd asked him about how his band was doing. He's like, the band's done. And I was like, oh, interesting. I was like, yeah, I'm not like doing anything either. Like, I'd quit music, gone into tech, and started working for a mindfulness meditation company, right? I was trying to get my mental space right. And so, yeah, it was, you know, he shared some songs with me. So I'm trying to do a band, and it was like right on the nose of what I was into. Like, it was just kind of grunge vibes, and I was kind of like, this is interesting. We just hit it off. We went for beers, and it worked out. And so, like, it wasn't really a band at the start, so it didn't feel too pressured. There was no expectation. Both of us, I think, were scratching a creative itch. And so, and the other thing that was terrifying is, like, I'd almost gone to kind of my tactics of, like, how I found my wife, right? Like, I was like, I wasn't looking for someone that was a loose cannon. I didn't want to collaborate with someone. I just wanted to trust somebody. Like, I wanted to write music with somebody and create music with somebody that something ugly wasn't going to come out the closet later. And as soon as me and Lee started chatting, like, I just knew he was that guy, right? You know what I mean? I'm like, as long as you're not like mainlining speed down your neck or something, like, yeah, I wasn't just looking for some surprises. And so I think the terrifying part for me was like, who do I start writing music with again, because the whole reason I quit was I didn't realize that there was probably a side to music that could be so dark that would bring the most negative stuff that's ever happened to me into my life, right? Like, to me, music was only ever positive and like highs, and so I didn't realize that one of the lowest lows I could experience ever would be, you know, brought from music. And so I think like, I did have my guard up. I think I was scared, and finding that person who could be somebody that I trust, like, you know, was going to be hard to come by. And it just so happened, like, after a few years, it naturally came into my life, and I met Lee, and this is where we're at. So to then be coming all the way to doing a record on Spine Farm, I don't think we'd ever envisioned this. We just envisioned, like, let's make music that's completely out of trend at the time we started in 2016, and is still arguably somewhat out of trend. There's no electronics in our music, which is arguably what pop music is these days. And let's just do something that makes us happy. Like, when you are a teenager and you make music for the first time, you're not thinking anything about commercial viability or anything. You're just hoping that your buddy plays that open note when you play that crazy beat, and oh man, listen to how heavy that is. It's crazy. And that's kind of, we went back to those basics of just like making music for us and doing things that would stimulate us, you know what I mean? And so to get all the way here and put a record out and almost be at the first rung of the ladder again with doing all this again it is scary, but it's also on our terms this time. There's no other terms, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is scary starting again, because especially if you've come from bands where that was your job, and that was all you did, was your entire, like, even in, you know, my 20s, it was all just like, what are we going to do next? What are we going to do next? How can we get this show? It was just hustling, and just because you had to somehow pay your rent whilst getting paid barely anything. So yeah, it was scary to be like, shit, are we really going to do this again? This is idiotic, especially now that it's even harder for bands to scrape by. Luckily, because we're a bit older now, we've kind of got our lives in order a little bit now. We've all got jobs that we actually like me and Luke both work in music. I don't hate my job for the first time ever, and it enables me to go and be in a band still. Whereas when you're in another band, you're like, shit, I'm gonna have to get back from this tour and just, I don't know, go work in a bar, or go just try and make ends meet, go drive Uber, do anything. It was just like, I don't do that again.
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head. I think when you go through it the first time, in my opinion, right, you get to a place where, like, you're doing it when you're a kid, money's not a problem, you live in your parents' spare room, you just make music and rebelling against everything, right? And then all of a sudden, like, you grow up a little bit, you move out, you've got to pay rent, but you'll work a shitty bar job, right? And then you kind of pass those years, and like, now all of a sudden you've got to like make money from music. And I think that's really the first point of compromise for anybody when music creation happens, right? When it has to make money, like when you're trying to make both of these things coexist, right? I need to make money and I only want to do this. I think compromise comes in, and I think that's what the beauty of Lowlives was when we started it. We both had jobs and didn't think like, oh man, let's just like do this full time. There's no part in our heads where we've been like, I can afford to raise, I have kids, right? There's no place in my mind that's like, cool, Lowlives is going to bring enough money in for me to raise my kids. I have to work a job. And so what we actually found was that it was a little bit of a help to us, because we didn't have to worry about compromise. And if we did want to go on tour, then cool, man. We both have jobs, so we can save some money to go on tour. We can afford to go record the record. With the record that you're listening to with Adrian, we paid for that out of our own pocket. You know, we sold it to a label afterwards, right? We were like, let's just go make this record with this producer that wants to work with us, you know? So I think it kind of flipped around the other way a little bit, the dependencies. And, you know, I think that it allowed us to be more pure in the art that we put out. And I think it also allowed us to be more picky about what we do, you know what I mean? So
yeah.
I'm not exactly loaded, so it's not coming out weird.
No. Let's not
our jobs don't pay us very much. Like, I'm still poor as fuck and I eat a lot of toast. But I would much prefer the money that I make from that. I can go and do cool shit, like go and fucking do a record. Do you know what I mean? Like, basically touring now is our holiday.
Yeah.
some shows have been announced already. Like obviously the first thing is the album coming out in May, but you're going to be playing Download. You'll be playing Aftershock as well. Louder Than Life, I believe, was announced as well. So, you know, we're a third into the year, if you will. When the album comes out, we're not even going to be halfway. So everybody that is, you know, watching this, what can they keep their, you know, eyes open and fingers crossed for the remainder of the year? When can we see you?
Yeah,
just lots of shows. That's. I mean, we're going to do some shows around Download because obviously 2 of us are English, 2 American. But I mean, man, to go and play, we can't just go to do one show in England.
Right.
Whilst we're there, we have to make the most of it. So we're going to go and do a couple weeks of shows. We're just trying to sort right now because Download was like a real last minute thing. Like we didn't even try to get Download. Then all of a sudden it was like, hey, you might be able to do these shows and Download. Do you want to do it? And we're just like, you know what? Fuck it. Let's just see what happens. And now our agent is just frantically trying to get some shows around it so we can make that work.
Basically, like each festival appearance that we're doing will have some like satellite shows to that. I mean, the goal really is to go over to the UK and Europe and do, you know, a full run, like hopefully a nice support slot. Same in the States and Canada. It would be nice to get like a nice support slot. But I'm going to be real with you, man. One of the biggest challenges for bands these days is getting those support slots. There's so much competition, right? You know, and so it's kind of like it's a chicken and the egg because it's like people want to take out a band that's buzzing, right? You know what I mean? But to get buzz, right, you've got to like put music out and get like listeners, but getting listeners comes from support shows. It's like a vicious cycle, right? So like where to start? So you really have to work extra hard to cobble your kind of entrance into other bands like recognizing and respecting you, and then you getting those opportunities, you know. And hopefully this year will be that year for us where playing some of these festivals, we'll make some friends, we'll do some satellite shows, you know. Maybe the touring schedule isn't as packed out as we'd like, you know, but hopefully we can parlay that, like, you know, into the end of the year or early next year. But the goal definitely is, like, we'd love to do a full US, you know, tour that dips into Canada, and we'd love to do a full UK European tour, kind of like we did in 2020 with New Year's Day, you know. So that's the goal.
So every time that you come to know something, just by your face.
The reaction of the people and the fans is really, really positive. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. And nobody seems to be caring about what band you were in before. Nobody seems to be caring about, oh, this sounds like that. People are just having fun with the music and seem to be able to relate with it in a very personal way, which is really cool to see. Luke and Lee, I have a feeling I could ask you 2 more questions and we'd be talking for another 3 hours. And I would love that. But I also want to be respectful for your schedule. So we'll wrap it up here, but I will keep my fingers crossed that I do get to see you on a stage this year, whether that is in Europe or whether that is in that dipping into Canada point that you were talking about.
Yes, we've managed to get to Canada once. We played Bovine like a couple years ago. So we'd love to come back because that was such an amazing experience.
Yeah, that's
Weren't we there for like
spot.
the basketball team? You guys won.
Yeah, Raptors won. It was North. We played North by Northeast.
Yeah.
Raptors won at the same time. So
that was a wild time in the city. It was
a
million people came to celebrate.
Where we were staying was where they were showing. It was like an art. What was it called?
Ossington. Was it 146 Ossington?
146 Ossington. So it's like a big art installation place, and they showed the game there, and there was like fucking 400 people there watching it. And then, we stayed above it, so it was carnage all night, man. Just people going crazy. It was cool to be there.
I was in the city. When they won a few hours after, I was actually in the Bovine.
No way.
Yeah. And then went back onto the street because the street was the place to be at that time.
Man, everyone was just tooting horns. It was like popping off. It was such a vibe.
Guys, this was a lot of fun talking to you guys. I really appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the release, and I hope that, to quote you guys, I hope a lot of new kids get introduced to heavy guitars for the first time.
Awesome.
Well,
Thanks
I
for
hope
having
to
us,
see you soon on the
Jasper.
road, man.
Let's do
Absolutely.
it again, brother.
You are awesome for watching this video. Click right here to see more content like it and subscribe to the channel.